happened to? I thought we could go 3 hours on this thing. What the? I don't know what's going on. Anyway, I don't know why it's kicking this out after an hour. Does somebody know if Instagram's changed something? As we all know, Turbo and I have gone for. I think we went for 4 hours one time. We'll see if we get Turbo back or not. We're not. There's Turbo right there. Chime in. We won't go for another hour, or we'll go as long as you want, I guess. But oh, now it says you're unable to join. There we go.
Glitch in the matrix.
Glitch
It's this thing behind
in the
me.
matrix.
I don't know what she's doing. She's jujuing us out. What's funny what you can cover in like it's somebody said this the other day about retirement. The comment was from this gentleman was, I'm not going to be that guy that goes and sits in Tim Hortons and has coffee and tells bullshit stories all the time. I'm like,
No, dude.
wow,
That's
you
what
know
we
what?
save live for,
Well,
Turbo. That's what we do live for.
That's where the live comes in. But it's like, you know what? How about it this way? You're like, wow, how about we do a live, like, I don't know, but once a week, but like once a month you get together. It's like a boys club chit chat kind of thing where it's like,
Yeah,
hey, Bob, what's the biggest cast iron fitting you ever put in live? And you're like, blah, 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 right? Shit like that. You know, you got that laundry list of stuff where you're like, this one time I did this job, and you're like, some
yeah.
good ones
Oh, there's
over the
Georgie
years,
boy.
man. How's George doing?
George is doing great. I think his
It's funny.
kids. He's hoping his kid's going to be like a professional lacrosse goalie. He sent some video. He sent me a video the other day of his kid just fucking clocking some dude.
Funny what we spawn our children to be. I want my kids to follow my footsteps and take my plumbing company. Maybe. You got that dream.
Listen,
the boys. How fun. That's pretty cool.
I've said it before. It's seriously, it's the greatest. It's the greatest thing in my whole life is that I get to be with my boys every day.
I mean, you get to work with your kids, which is fantastic. You get to correlate. You get to literally give them the benefit of your knowledge, because for your kids, you would be, I don't know if you'd be more difficult with them, but the fact that they could learn from you as an asset, like you think of what you would give to them, anything. Like, so for that, it would be fantastic, right? They get the leg up. Like as a competitor, you'd put your foot on the guy's head. You hate him. You're like, arr. The boys, you're like, absolutely, I'll come and show you. You know, you'll give them the fatherly touch, right? I think that's fantastic. That's admirable as a business owner that you get to do that. I'm envious. I think that's fantastic. Boys are lucky, right? They get to see the work
it's awesome.
ethic, you know. So yeah, that's fantastic. I like that. It's a good legacy too, right?
Like,
You get to teach the boys how to literally make their own life. You know, with this skill set, you guys are made. Yeah. Like, unless you don't.
We had a meeting about a month ago with a tax lawyer on how we're gonna flip everything over from me to them.
Yep.
And it was sort of the eye opener for them. Like, oh, like this is real. I'm like, dude, it's as real as it gets, man. Like,
you get it.
In 5 to 6 years, everything that's here is yours, and what you do with it, well you can do anything you want with it.
The more you work, the more you get paid. You know, and there will hit a point where they'll realize that the dollar just isn't. I'm done. They're just, you don't have enough money anymore. You can't pay me enough to sacrifice my time. And the older we get, the more experience. Like, I don't want to work anymore. I paid my stuff. I'm like, how thick does the steak have to be? Like, you know, how much money do you need? And when do you want to, like, if you pull the trigger too soon, you run out of gas at the end. If you pull the trigger too late, you die with all that money in the bank. It's a sweet spot of trying to figure out what that is.
I think that's what the boys are hoping for. I die with all that money in the bank.
Well, yeah, I know, right? Everything
before I spend it all.
All your assets. You look at your assets and you look at what you have and have built, and you're like, when you go, it's like, you know, the wife then like say that domino, and I'm like, it's impressive that you get to leave a legacy like that. Like, you probably couldn't fuck up your life like that if you tried, right? Like, you'd have to do some radical crazy. Otherwise, you keep going. Like even working like I have, I'm like, that's a phenomenal gift to be able to give my kids, right?
Yeah.
If I could
It's
spend it
true.
all before I go.
The beautiful thing is, it's like, and that's the interesting thing. We're gonna sound like super old men here for a second, but
Well,
I remember walking out of school with my ticket, thinking, okay, now what am I gonna do? And you've got like $8 in your bank account, and you know what I mean? You have zero contacts. You have
yep,
zero idea
yeah,
what you're gonna do and how you're gonna make it all work. And whatever that is, 30 years later, I'm like, oh, actually, if you actually focus and apply yourself and
yep.
are resilient enough, like, and it's, as you know, it's not an easy road, but like, you can have my, to be perfectly blunt, and you can speak for yourself, I'm sure, but my life is better than I ever thought it would be in just almost every
Oh,
respect.
well,
You know what I mean?
I guess like from the guy that I got into plumbing, not with, but a guy that I've heard a lot of people say a lot of things that have stuck and hung with me. Um, One of them was, you'll never be rich, but you'll be very comfortable. And I'm like rich, what's rich? Wealthy, millions and millions. But I'm like, he's like, you'll always have nice toys, boats, cars, all that stuff. And I would consider
Yeah.
that I've had a fullness of life that I didn't anticipate. Um, when I think it was around when I was maybe 30 years old. As a child, growing up how I grew up, my vision was that I had these goals set. I achieved all those by the time I was 30. And I remember saying it. I'm like, well, fuck, I got a wife, I got two kids, I've got I've got a life that I think is phenomenal. I've exceeded my expectations as what I wanted in life. And I'm like, so for a bit there, I was literally lost. I just worked to work, you know, and I didn't know what to do. Right? I'm like, well, I don't understand. I wanted to get married. Yes. I had two children. Yes. Owned a home. Yes. Owned a business. Done. Like my goals is what I thought being a success was. I had achieved those at 30 years old. I'm like, well, now what do I do? Like
Yeah.
I invested in the business and I worked, right? I had contracts and lots of stuff set up. And I worked way too much in the early years when I had kids. I'm like, I answered every call. I was so hungry. I was scared of never working. The flip of that now is I'm like, you know what? I answer the phone. I pick the job. I'm like, some come in, some don't. It's always worked out and it's worked out better. You said at the start, you don't schedule, right? I'm like,
No.
I don't. And you tell people what's happening on Monday. I'm like, well, I've got a variety of things I can do. And because of the fluidity of the business, I get a phone call for a main sewer backup. And I'm like, guess what I'm doing? Shuffling my day, reorganizing. I get enough business where I find it interesting to flow with no schedule. I got a house coming up that I said I would do. And I'm like, it's a few days. The drive, it's in Cranbrook. I'm coming out your way. I'll probably pop in and say hello. I'm coming and piping a guy's house in Cranbrook. So I'm like, and it was delayed. Finance fell through for some shit. But he's like, okay, we're back up. And I'm like, so I got to go see my mom. So that's a scheduled thing. Otherwise, I have no idea.
No, it's a beautiful thing, really. We're the exact same way. And if you look at sort of even the North American model of what's considered, like, I've always thought of it as well off, rich, and wealthy.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like, those are sort of the three whatevers.
The level.
And there's no doubt that by every economic metric there is, I'm rich.
Yeah.
Like that,
Yep.
I'm in the 1% of whatever. I mean, I don't have an island, so I'm not. You know what I mean? I'm
Yep.
not that level, but there's very few things that I worry about anymore because
Well, the
the
problems
engine
in
is in
finance,
place.
yeah, it runs itself. And I mean, when you get to a certain point, you create your own wind. You don't have to really stress out about that anymore. Like
Yeah.
you don't have to work because you need to, you're broke, right? There's guys
No.
that have to go to work. They've got 25-year mortgage payment. And that's, I guess, the benefit of age in a way. You get to reap the benefit of that and then hand select your jobs. I don't feel like
Yeah.
doing that job. So, and you've done this too. Everybody has. All right. That job's worth 50 grand. I don't particularly want it, but fuck it. I'll do it for 100,000. And the guy says, yes. You're like, that's
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
shit job. I wish I didn't. You're like, and you get the approval, and you're like, I fucking thought I put enough on there. You're like, it's a Hail Mary.
No.
It's happened a few times in my career. And I'm like, I thought I made it so stupid that they would say no, and they're like, absolutely. And you're like,
No,
what?
just for everybody out there, that doesn't happen. That doesn't happen all the time. Like
No,
that's not whatever.
that's
Like
what I mean.
that, I can think of
But
3 or 4 in
I was
my
gonna
life
say,
where I'm like,
but yep. Where
where
you're
like,
like, you truly didn't want it, and
yeah,
as a boss owner, you're like as a business owner, you just shake your head and you're like, I didn't want to do it, and because the same thing. At some time when you've done a job, you're like, I don't care how much you could have paid me, it fucking wasn't worth it.
yeah.
Like it was gross or whatever it was, and I'm like, that wasn't about the money. I just did that because I was I committed to something, and I just,
You're doing what you said you would do.
yeah,
At
I
the end
know,
of the day,
I
right?
know, and a couple of those where I'm like, you know what, it's that you couldn't pay me enough to do that job. It was that horrible. Ugh. Funny trade.
No, you're not.
Fuck, isn't it?
You're not wrong. We all have a couple of those nightmares that.
Bob the tool rep. I can't wait to see this shit go down. I hope I live
Yeah,
long
well,
enough
you're gonna have to wait a
watch
few
this
years, but
transition. I know, but
I
it's
don't.
like I'm trying to think of what you would rep. Bob the influencer, and I'm like a full 180.
Dude, that would be hilarious if I just said, you know what, F it, I'm all in. I'm gonna be super influencer.
Yep.
I'm gonna be at every trade
Yep.
show. There's that dude, and I'm not making fun of him, but everybody there's that dude that's the general guy that he's a general. He loves General Wire, and he
Yep.
wears like the red jumpsuit with all the General Wire. Do you know who I'm talking about?
No, I don't.
Oh
I'm
well,
like, oh my god,
I'm sure there's someone on the
a pro
knows his
influencer,
handle,
right?
but I see him all the time at the trade shows. I'm like, I'm gonna be wearing some
A leotard.
purple fucking jumpsuit with.
Yep.
Here's all my reps. This is what I'm going with today. And I do, as I say, I have a massive driveway. So I'll do it down here in the barn and just be like, maybe I'll do like the, what the fuck is it?
Well, it's like you can,
What are those?
and because of plumbing, you can do press guns, and you can be like, because there's so many different manufacturers of them now. I'm like,
Yeah, that's right.
When pressing came out, Rigid had the CT400, I think it was called, monster, and then cordless. I had a REMS cordless. I think it was the first cordless like literally almost ever made. And then the domino of every company fucking jumped on board. And like it was
But
such
it took
a new
forever,
thing.
right?
It did. And then
It's the
all of a
same
sudden
with cameras.
a tidal wave happened, and then all of a sudden Greenlee made one, DeWalt makes them, the Japanese brands, each tool company, Milwaukee makes them, Force Logic, Rigid makes them, and like
Well,
now,
and all it is they're like they literally have the backdoor meeting with Rigid and say, how much is it going to cost me for you to sell me the tech that I can put my name on it?
Make it orange.
$10 million.
Yeah, done. Now pressing is like I've got so many. I think I don't even know anymore. 6 maybe press guns I have, right? Because I had a crew, and I'm like now I'm like a one-man mission. I'm like I'm solo. I'm happier on my own, in all honesty. So if I break one, I just go to the next press gun. So those are just people like, what's a good press gun? I'm like, they're all the same shit. They go click. If it goes click on your brand of fitting, which one's the best one? The cheapest fucking one you can buy, because they all go click. Like people
buy the DeWalt one because they're the lowest price one because they're trying to get back. They're trying to get into the market, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Like
when they're hungry, they come down in price. I've had one press gun fail in all my years, right? And I probably soaked the fucking thing anyway, but one in all the time. And I'm like, I think the most used press tool I have is the REMS one. It was the most reliable. It did the most for me. Rigid is the next one. I had a Rigid 320E for a long time. That crazy pistol gun monster. Head only rotated 90
One
degrees.
I have in my basement, or just down below us, right here.
Yep. Yeah.
The CT400 that weighs 75 pounds.
I still have the motherfucker. It's probably, if it's got a press count on it, I bring that out when I want to giggle and fucking go, I feel like Hercules today because the thing weighs so fucking much.
I don't use it anymore, but that was like, if somebody was going to, if I brought on a new hire, I did it with both the boys. I'm like, here you go. Here's the press gun. And your first 10 presses are going to be with this huge monster.
Well, because they appreciate the little battery cordless operated one, the next one they use. You hand them that and you're like, it's like you just showed a caveman what a wheel was, right?
Yeah.
They're like, this thing's awesome. You're like, there you go, off you go. But you show them the monster first.
I do have a couple of those big, that's like the first whole hogs at the same thing that with those big spade bits, the propeller bits or whatever the hell they are. I don't know what they're called. But those are the
because you
fucking
you drilled up
rip your shoulders out.
thing, and we used to do log homes, the first company I worked for, and that old super hog up a ladder, you'd get stuck to the wood and you couldn't fucking let go, and the breaker had to trip. There's no clutch. If you were lucky, the tooth broke in the planetary gear, which I've changed out a million of, because you're drilling and that 4 5/8 self feed fucking grabs something and it goes bang. Yeah. You watch a fully grown 250-pound man get thrown off a ladder like a rag doll back in the day. Now it grinds and it does its thing, and I'm like, we called it the not pussy drill because you pay, you know, that sidebar that you put on that I never use because I'm like, you put the thing on there, didn't you? Yeah, every time. If you got it,
you had to.
You did, because you could hold on to it pretty good, but you knew if it bucked you once, you're like, and you brace it. You read the instruction if you did. Brace that up against a 2x4, and you're like, that thing saved my life. I don't know how many times. So I'm not that bright like that. I try to do it without the handle, and you learn pretty quick. You're like, every time, put the handle on. Yeah. It's not worth it.
Make sure you put it on the right way you're drilling too.
Yep, I know. Everybody's done that. It's like the Hilti thing without doing the punch. Some of the tool innovations that I look at, I'm like, where was that 30 years ago when I started?
That's the thing, right? Like that's the thing that's really changed the trade is the technology has just made it easier, an easier entry, and the longevity of your actual career.
Yeah,
that's what the tool tech has changed. Truly.
Well, they're body saving features, right? Yeah. Like some of the stuff that's in there. So.
Yeah.
Huh.
No.
We solve the world's problems, Bob.
Just do it the way I do it, and you'll be fine. Stop trying to think of it. You have a better way than me. You don't. That's how we solve the world's problems. Just do it the way I do it.
Well, and when you tell people, I'm like, you know, our responsibility as journeymen, as business guys as well. And I would tell every kid that came working through, I'm like, here's the deal. It's my responsibility to show you. I don't like to say the word cheapest because it implies shoddy. You want to use the least amount of fittings with the least amount of friction on the system, install it the best way you humanly can, and try to install something with longevity. It's gonna, you know, if I've done a good job, I was talking about a vodka plant I did, God, forever ago, and I'm like, I oversized the drains on the system. I talked about upgrades that I didn't even tell the guy, like I just did it. And I'm like, I think this is going to provide you with a really good system. You're going to have, you know, a lot of growth. You're going to need to do some drain cleaning in this place because it's mashed potatoes. Basically, you make vodka. And I'm like, you're going to dump all your shit down the drains. I know you are.
Yeah.
Trough drains with baskets and whatnot. The growth is going to be phenomenal. You know, I never went back there for a drain clean, and I asked him how it was. He goes, you know, ironically, it's really good. Right? Like I expected to be back constantly. And I'm like, he's like, no, I've drain cleaned the place once. And he goes, I remember when you put the clean outs in, he goes, you said go down here, and he did it himself. I'm like, you know what? I like that. I installed something that was logical, and the owner appreciated it and used it later.
Yeah.
You know, and it should be the cheapest way to pipe it. I know it's not. It's the most inexpensive with the least restriction.
No, that's the key, right? You see all these guys that are just installers only. And I know there's that whole great divide between installers and service, but there's truly a different mentality of those guys that say, I'll never be back in this place in my whole life.
Oh my God. You know what? Right. You've seen equipment spinning backwards. You've seen pumps pipe backwards, running backwards because three-phase. Guys just don't give a shit. If they were in service, they'd be like, that guy that's got to come here at 3 a.m. I guess we should have spun the clean out. The clean out was there, but I should have spun it the other way.
Yeah.
And he's got to cut a hole, and you've been there, or there isn't one, or it's halfway in the cabinet, and you're like, how'd this pass inspection? I need to get in that clean out. That's the only access pod I got. If I pull the toilet, I'm going to flood the place because it's a bit of a geyser. Like the water's that full.
Yeah. No.
Shit like that.
It happens all the time.
Yeah.
As you know, I probably have done, I don't know, not that many compared to the guys that just do strictly new construction, but I've done 120 houses in my life, and every one of those ones or some inspector would be like, dude, add a clean out here, add a clean out there, that's the wrong way.
Yep.
And then, you know, later that day, I'm on a service call to go clean a drain,
Yep.
and I'm like, how in the fuck is
Have them
this?
pass it.
Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah. Yep.
Go down into the basement and find out the tag.
Yep.
Take a picture of it.
Yep.
Say, who passed this? I
And
literally got shit for it
Yep.
2 hours ago.
Yeah, I did. Yeah. People, I love when people say too, they're like, it passed inspection. I'm like, that doesn't abscond you from doing it wrong. The inspector can't see it all. Like, look at this gas flip on that job.
So
someone's in shit over this. Like,
so who's gonna get? I mean, the question is, and I know people say that on a past inspection. I'm like, who's gonna pay for that? Let's just pretend that your worst scenario happened. Like, and it popped off. The fryer next to it ignited, and you literally have fucking places on fire. Who is getting sued?
It would have
not,
to go
I know who's not getting in suit is the inspector.
I was just going to say, the inspector has no responsibility to it. It always come down to the installer. But people say this, but I got it inspected. I got a passed inspection. And I'm like, yeah, but it's still wrong. Like, the guy just, he looked down, he saw him, and I'm like, it was one of those awe-inspiring moments, because I'm like, when I got the gravity of what it was, I'm like, I was like, click, 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 and then it popped off because I pushed up, and I'm like, when you open a door the wrong way, and you're like, maybe the handle's fucked or whatever. I clicked it, and then I heard it. And normally I wear these things, and I'm listening to music. If I'm doing gas work, I got a gas leak on a connector. They took the tether off, so they pulled the thing out to clean it so often they actually flexed the stainless connector so it cracked and it broke. That's what I was called in for a gas leak, and it was because of that. None of the tethers were hooked on. I'm like, Jesus. So I clicked everything on, swapped the connector, and that's when I found this, and I'm like, what? No, like, how's gas coming out? It's got a check valve inside. Oh, it failed. And then I'm like, it's fucking backwards. And I'm like, in my career,
I have never seen that ever.
Neither have I. Well, it's got an arrow on it, and I'm like,
like, it's got like 6 arrows on it.
I know, and it says, and it even says flow. And then when I found that, in awe, and I'm like, it took me a bit, because it takes you back, right? When you're looking, you're like, you've seen a lot of shit, so have I. I'm like, I look left, and I'm like, oh, sweet Jesus, they're all fucking done this way. I'm like, oh my God. So, and the owner of the place, the manager, gets a hold of me because she saw my Instagram, and she's like, take that down now. And I'm like, I didn't mention any names. I said, nobody knows where I'm working. I'm like, don't worry, I got to write a report, honey. The shitstorm's coming. And I'm like, and if it doesn't, there's a potential that could have been extremely serious. And I'm like, I don't know how it's going to go down, honestly. But you know
how old is that installation?
Under 2 years. Under 2 years, Bob. This was passed not long ago, and I'm like, and it's press fit. It's press fit steel. So I'm like, whoever had the ability to do it, that's commercially
Mega
done.
G they put in that thing?
Yes, that's how new it is. And I'm like, so it's coming. I've had the chat with the general contractor, and it's going to keep trickling down, and the fitter's going to be in shit, and he or she. Safety authority will get involved. It's going to grow legs. You know how this goes. Because when you tell people, they're like, never heard of it. And I'm like, but you know what happens if you go click, right? The cleaner's there. He's doing his thing. He takes it out, and it pops off, and he doesn't see the fucking gas valve shut off behind it. What happens? Say goodbye to that building. And that guy gets killed in that room because somebody didn't, it was an apprentice. I'm like, well, that apprentice needs to come and see or the journeyman, which, if you hear the words, I didn't know you could do that, come out of his mouth, you're like, oh. So we'll see. I think I'll keep you posted. This is an interesting one.
So do you think it was a remote inspection, or?
I don't know, because it was through COVID, right? So
it was probably just
on a video.
The camera, and he just said, look it.
I don't know. On the picture, you can see the knuckle is on there for the slip release, right? But for me, it was that door handle moment. I shit you not. I remember going, fuck, man, I'm becoming a pussy. I'm getting old. And then I was like, and I remember in my head going, no, push it up and try it the other way. And I'm like, click. And then I felt the gas and heard it at the same time. And I'm like, holy fuck. And I shut it off. And I'm like, it hit me where I'm like, an open gas line. Oh, man.
That's crazy. And you said, is it the same one where they actually broke the door mount by pulling, mechanical failure?
Yeah. Yes.
I've never seen that either.
Yep. Same. When I soap tested it, I'm like, what? And I still have the connector, right? Of course. and they had flexed it that much that the door mount had failed. I'd never seen that before. Those door mounts are what, $350, $400?
Yep.
Right? Like, they're not inexpensive connectors, Bob. You know that. They're tough.
No, they're not.
Like,
and they
yeah.
the only ones I've seen is actually the only one that I've seen fail sort of like that way is it caught like it was too close to the like it was touching the one of the elements, you know what I mean? And it burnt through the rubber and finally through the steel and finally it started you could smell it leaking, right?
Yeah.
So
you know, and
I've seen that, but I've never seen it sort of
I know move that much. Like
it's a lot of
and
movement.
I kept it. I don't have it cut apart because I'm a curious fucking guy. I literally want to take it, peel the casing back, cut it with an angle grinder, be like, no, like see if you can see where the failure is. Bubble test it, and it's going to be in one of the corrugations on the stainless. I didn't think they were that thin and flexy, but here we are, right? You know, and the place isn't old. That's my thing with that. I've gone to flexible connectors where, well, maybe they're just fucking lazy and don't keep the equipment. But do they clean? The kitchen is clean. Do they clean the kitchen enough? That's what I'm like. The guy doing it either doesn't disconnect the equipment or pushes it out of the way enough because he's lazy, because you can't get behind it. Like, I don't know. The investigation will reveal it because it's pretty serious. Like, you deal with people's lives, and I've got, I don't have enough insurance to cover what I think was going to happen. And if you want me to simulate it, I'll just unclick
if you kill somebody,
run out the door. I know.
What's the price of that? I have no idea. Well, like he could price equipment and buildings and shit, but if somebody dies,
well, years ago, because I have $10 million for the gas bond, the liability insurance, and they told me years ago when I took it out, they're like, because I do boilers, you do too, boilers, hotels, that kind of stuff. They're like, you can kill one person, and I'm like, oh, and they're like, not like that. I'm like, oh shit. If you kill one person because of your hand, right, like something you made a mistake on, the wrongful death lawsuit could hit around 10 million. So that's why the 10 million coverage is there.
Yeah.
Today, I don't know what that would be.
What would that be?
Like Rael was going hard. Rael was going to start a company. He was going to do this, going to do that, going to do this. And then what do you have? Is there 2 underwriters for insurance? Nobody would insure him. They're like, fuck you. He's like, can't start a company.
Yeah. No, it's
you can start a company, but you can't do work for WCB rated companies, like places that check your insurance, restoration work, hotels, major corporations. You have to provide your certificate of insurance. If you can't provide that, you can't work here. No. So if you get into that style of work, there's guys that are unlicensed, there's guys that don't have insurance, there's lots of that shit. But one mistake, one problem, it's like all that money you made is gone. Your responsibility extends a little further.
That's the problem with that sort of those guys is if they're uninsured, it's like the guys that drive with no car insurance. Like, what do? You killed somebody.
Money from nothing?
Like, okay, well, you have no money. You're going to go to jail. Great. What does that do for restitution?
Well, you don't own a home. We're going to fine you $100 million. You can fine me $50. I can't. I can't pay the insurance, or I'm skating it, and I don't care.
Yeah.
It's going to get to a point. I've seen enough in my gas career. I've heard of boiler doors exploding and shit like that. I've never seen anyone die, but some of the stupid shit that I personally have come across, I'm like, a 6-inch going to a 4-inch atmospheric. The guy, when I got there, the mechanical room door was left open, and I'm like, I thought that was weird. It smelt in the room, and it was a long mech room. 3 AP6700s, the copper coils, the Berkey copper coils. 3 of those. Pool boiler, big room. A lot of power in it. And he goes, I go in, and then when I get a headache, I leave. I kick the door open so it exhausts it, and I'm like, and the guy's a Russian guy, and it's like and I'm like, one more time, what? And I see what's there, and it's foil taped, but there's a gap. I took pictures of it. I have pictures in my camera roll. There's a gap on the top of it, so when it exhausts, I don't know, 20% exhausts into the fucking room. And I'm like, a hot tub boiler, 210,000 open atmospheric. There was no power venter. There was a power venter, but it's too small. And they did the atmospheric boiler into a power venter, but the 6 went into the 4. And the guy, and I just, I called the safety authority. I'm like, you're not gonna fucking believe this. And the guy's like, when I get a headache, I leave. I'm like, oh, sweet Jesus,
that's awesome.
What? Like, Imagine the guy's in there too long, and the door gets kicked closed for somebody sees it, whatever. You kill that man, and you take that responsibility on.
It's true.
Unsupported piping, like just it goes on and on and on. I've got lots of those.
I've literally said that to the boys. If we're like we've used that jetter, like in a parkade or something, you know what I mean, where it's all sort of enclosed, even with the makeup air those things have. I'm like, listen, when you start feeling a little bit whatever,
Woozy.
you get to go for lunch, take an hour, clear your head, blah blah blah, because you're basically dealing with the exhaust out of these little engines. But that's red. That's a huge red flag. Don't worry. Just when you get a headache, just walk out of the room and you'll be fine. I'm like, what if you can't make it out of the room?
Scary, right? I find that scary in the trade, what I see. So if I'm one guy and I see that, what does the inspector see on a daily basis? And this, this particular job where I'm like, well, if you couldn't get the connector right, what
else
you missed the connection?
Wrong? Like that's the simplest thing in the world.
That's what I mean. I call it kindergarten plumbing because I'm like, basically a 10-year-old child, I think, could do a better job. And I'm like, so for me, fuck it. Bring that company back in, open it up. I want to see everything. And as a matter of fact, the last 5 years of your jobs, we're going back because I'm like, well, who did it? I want to know who did it. I want, like, for me, I'd be that biggest dick inspector. I'd be like, here's what I need to see because I don't trust any of it now. If you can't get an arrow and flow right, where's like
fucked?
Oh,
it's
man. I know.
It's like those. Remember that one? You did the boiler, or we did the one boiler, and then where they put the iron fitting in that, everything's copper or brass, and they couldn't find a 2.5 by 2 inch reducing coupling, so we'll just put a black one in and walked away.
No one will notice. No one will notice. As a temporary measure, I can see it. I can understand it. You got to go run for a week.
Yeah.
I'm like, you could just don't tell anybody.
Order the parts
and
then make it come back and we'll make it right.
But
not those guys.
But you need to do a Mike Holmes. You got to make it right. So because then a guy like us, I did the Pan Pacific mountainside years ago, and they had problem, lots of leaks, lots of shit going on, and you can imagine this is a significant hotel. The recirculators for the hot water system were significant. Like they were big. They were like a 12-inch impeller, super thin, pretty bougie. I thought they were the neatest system. I've got pictures of it. It took a year, and they put in on the domestic hot water recirc were heating pumps, and you should have seen when. Oh yeah, I'm like,
shit.
I think I found your problem, and I got brought in like within a year. I think it was lots of problems. I pulled the bearing assembly off in the nose cone, and the impeller had made this really beautiful swirl. I've got photos of it. This is like in the late 90s when this hotel was built. And I'm like, well, the problem is the heating circulators at that time, these pumps are $1,000. But the bronze body domestic hot water approved ones, they're like 11 grand. So this is a $20,000 fuck up. And let alone all the rubber seats because the iron deposit through the domestic hot water, it's not approved for it. And I'm like, and guess who finds this shit, Bob?
Yeah.
And I'm like,
no.
And so my first question, I'm like, where's the commissioning agent? Where's the guy that actually from an engineering standpoint walks around and goes, that's the right pump, this is the right boiler, I've seen the wrong boilers. I've fucking seen, like you've seen so much where you're like, I've had it come up, like the inspector's like, I fucking in town, he's like, Turbo, you're the only one that calls me with this stupid shit. And I'm like, I thought for years in the phone book when I had a phone ad, there's like, for weird shit, call this guy. Because you know how many times I've heard people say, I've never heard of that. And I'm like, well, I got fucking photos of it. This was in backwards.
That used to be our company model when I had all those dudes. Like it was like, it was literally the company model was I've never seen that before.
I know.
It was it's a terrible thing to say.
It is, but you're like in awe because you're like, there's no way this could be that fucked up. Like some of the S-trap joints and the fittings that are in backwards. I'm like, I didn't know you could do it like that. God bless you. Duct tape, eh? You know? Man, oh man. Too funny.
Oh, that brings back like 10,000 memories of just, holy F, I have never seen that before. What is going on right now? So terrible.
A chemical injector for an irrigation system. I shit you not, it was something out of the fucking Simpsons. in the Wood Run Lodge in Whistler. I got video and photos of it. And the LMI peristaltic injector pump was on the wrong fucking side of the dual check valve assembly, Bob. I'm like, I'm like, there's no fucking way. It's a click, click, click. You know those peristaltic injector pumps that are positive displacement, like they use them for pool chemical and whatnot. And I'm like, and I looked and I'm like, oh my
it's on the wrong side.
God. Like, and I just got out of my cross connection control certificate course. So I was like the fucking god of cross connection. I'm like, the potential hazard is everywhere. And I'm like, right, everybody's going to die. But if you got a check valve, you're okay. This was injecting on the wrong side. I'm like, oh my God, I couldn't cut it out fast enough. I'm like, I hope I'm not liable. Terrified me. Jesus.
I remember taking the cross connection course. It's like watching, do you remember the drunk driving videos when you were like 17? They would show you like,
everybody
dude,
dies,
if you drive drunk, like you can dismember your entire family and this is what they're going to look like. And with the cross connection, it was the same thing. If you mess this up, millions of people will die. Horrible, poisonous death.
So I had my cross connection control certificate. You had to test 2 pressure vacuum breaker assemblies. Testable. I'd never seen one in the field.
Oh yeah.
At the lab, at the thing, I'd seen them. Well, we don't. I've worked in labs up here in Whistler. I didn't have any. So to keep your ticket active, you had to test 2 a year. And I'm like, they're on commercial equipment, but they don't. You're not required to test them. They're not a testable.
See very many of them up here either.
They're very uncommon. So the thing in BC, to keep your cross connection certificate, you had to test 2 a year. And I'm like, I was one of the only compliant because I bought 2 of them and tested them in my house. Because I'm like, well, I got to keep my ticket valid. Then they made it here, so you have to full recert and take the entire test, which I didn't live in Vancouver. So I had to do a lab portion, and I could never get the time off, so I let my ticket lapse. I think my ticket was 4122. I was the 4,000th tester in British Columbia, like 4th over 4117. 4117. And I'm like, now it's at like 42,000. Like, shows you how old you are, right? You're like, Jesus.
Yeah.
And I stopped testing them. I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah, mine's at 9.8. That's the year that they gave you, and it was like 980. Well, I can't remember anymore. 17 or something.
I haven't tested a device in so many years. Rail had it, and I'm like, nobody cares about it out here. It's kind of a big deal when they first do the building, but no one gives a shit for the aftercare.
It's like everything, right? Like when that stuff came out, it was religion.
Everybody's dead.
Religion. If you mess this up,
everybody's dead.
You're going to jail.
Oh yeah. Oh, and the liability. Well, you probably got the same cross connection control. The guy fucking, the water main broke, battery acid leached in the system because of some negative pressure. They re-energized it, it peeled the skin off. And I'm like, holy fuck. In Chicago, the cadaver, the water bubbler had blood coming out of it. And I'm like,
what was the Walkerton one? Remember the Walkerton one?
Yeah.
Where whatever.
That was the chemical injecting. Fucked up the plant. They killed people, and they're like, oh yeah. Water regulations tightened up a little bit.
We were just on site the other day, because the city phone and said, listen, you need to get this thing tested, and they specifically said one device. We need this tested.
Yeah.
And so the gal called us. I sent out Pete. He sends me a picture. The last time, like, there was this one that needed to be tested, which was tested 2 years ago. And then there's 4 others that were tested in like 2014 and haven't been tested since. He's like, what do you want me to do? I'm like, well, we're there dealing with this one directly. Talk to the general manager, and we'll figure out if we sort of want to raise the debt on that one and whatever the fuck.
If you haven't tested it in 10 years, you know what it's going to do. Either strip it and rebuild it, or if you can, and all that gummed up rubber that's going to be in there that's fucking done.
It's going to be terrible.
The water.
They were Febcos too.
Fucked. Yeah.
Febcos are a bitch to work on.
They are. Everything leaks. It's always a problem with that. I was happy I was happy to get out of it and not do it anymore. Good money in it, but usually there was a guy up here that had a testing company, but he wasn't a plumber, so he could only.
That's the thing.
This was too good,
right?
Fuck
it's
Bob,
so
it
twisted. Same here.
He was like this. He talked to everybody up, went around, chatted everybody up, and then he'd have to get a certified plumber to go in and pull the ticket to put the new one in. He could work on them, and then once he got to that point where he's like, it doesn't work.
You can test them, but you can't install them.
No.
Like, what?
I'm like, and I laughed. I'm like, this guy was like making a big deal. He was going to make all this money. And I'm like, but you have to be a tradesman. You have to be a red seal plumber to install the first one. To work on it, no problem. You get to a point where it's replacement. Hi. And he was such a dick about it. So nobody would install them for him. He actually closed his company and he fucked off. I laughed. I'm like, you didn't know that part, did you? He was all rah rah, and then he's like, but I can't put a new one in.
And you can't replace it. You can change.
Yep.
You can change the check valves. But that's
work
it.
on this thing. Yeah, the rubber springs and whatnot. This guy had it dialed, man. He was so good. Lube and go.
You think he would have won? You think he would have won the contest at the Toronto show?
Maybe. The stupidest shit scene. Oh, I love it. I saw one where the guy.
It's like you said, kindergarten club. It's like the sandbox. Okay, go play in the sandbox and build your fucking shit.
If you can't
Hilarious.
get it done, like Jesus. I saw an RP once with a piece of it was a tire. They cut a chunk. God bless him. The RP was leaking, and there was a lot. And they cut a patch out of a tire, out of a steel belted radial, and they clamped it to the RP discharge point. And I got in, and I'm like, and it was dribbling a bit. And it was at a. I'm not going to tell you where it was. I'll tell you off camera because it's pretty derogatory where I had to work. But you know where I was working. And I was like, that's some pretty indigenously innovative stuff right there.
I think you just revealed what you.
Oh, I couldn't have. It was bolted on. I'd never seen it. And the best part is the mechanical company that did it, fucked it up in reverse in the most expensive way. It was a 4-inch RP on the main company of the building, which should have been a 4-inch DCVA. You know that.
I was going to say.
And on the boiler, they had a dual check valve assembly. And I'm like, I'm like, you guys fucked up. And I looked at the print. This was the best. The print. There was a correct on the print. They fucked it up in the most expensive way. I'm like, what's a 4-inch RP worth at the discharge? And
I don't even know. How much is that thing? $4,000? I don't even know.
Probably 10. A 4-inch RP.
Probably.
And so I laughed because I'm like, okay, so they had this rubber tire clamp thing on. It was fucking genius. Because I'm like, they had to.
That's a good idea.
And I'm like, and I get in there and I'm like, what the fuck? The 4-inch discharge RP, how much water would that produce? I'm like, there's a little dinky 4-inch drain below me. I'm like, I don't think I'd make it out of the mechanical room if this thing full discharge and you couldn't open the door. The door is open inward. The water pressure up against the door would kill you. You'd have to smash. I don't know what you'd do. And I'm like, and I called the company and I'm like, I was a little reckless in my younger years. I'm like, you guys fucked this up by far in the most expensive way. I'm like, normally you make a mistake on money. Like you make it because you make a cheap mistake. These guys, like how do you?
Exact opposite.
One letter was wrong. The R and the D on those switched somehow. I think I got.
But what does that tell you? That tells you that those people shouldn't be installing that, because that would be the very we can replay the tape. As soon as you said RP on the main line, I'm like, wait, what?
I know.
What does that mean? What are you talking about?
You can't do that.
You can't
do that. I'm like, whoa, and I'm like, whoa, this is some, and I'm like, I got called in for a leak. I'm like, oh, I passed the puck on this one, man. I don't know where that went, but God knows. I know where it is. I could go back to it and be like, can I open that? I need to get in there. You know, put a rig suit on, the hard hat, and a clipboard.
Yeah.
Get them to let you in there. Be like,
that's exactly right.
And go and take a picture and be like, it'll still be there. The building's still there. I'm like, I want to see what they did because I'm like,
they didn't do nothing. You know, they didn't do nothing.
I don't know.
They probably
scary.
They probably took it out and just straight piped it.
I was gonna say I've seen them jump too, where I'm like, they just go around the bypass.
That's right.
In your
snap.
Life.
You guys have the wires for the main because you have the bypass. Just snap the wires, open it up. We'll be back sometime to fix it. That sometime is never.
And you've expired the sue ability. It's like company's gone. It's changed the registry number. It's over. It's It's awe-inspiring, some of the stuff you see where you're like, it just takes you back because you're like, hold on, I'm not God. Much as I may think so. I've never seen it done that way. So I try to get there and I'm like, hold on, is this? No, that's completely fucked. I'm like, I can't believe, the gravity sits in and you're like, I've never seen that before.
You got to go with your spidey senses, man.
Oh.
As soon as you say it, I've said it to the boys. I'm like, what is happening here?
What?
You sort of you're trying to put it all together in your head because you're like, what the fuck?
Yes. And your kids see you perplexed. You're like, I didn't. Ooh, that's why being an inspector, I don't think I could. Because
you couldn't do it, man.
I'd laugh at the guy.
You'd get called into the office and say, Rob, you can't write up everybody.
Yeah.
You can't write up everybody. You got your Mac. It'd be the opposite of whatever the. You can only write up 20 people a week, Rob.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yep. Yep.
That's the
You
maximum.
are out of control. Like, cause I think of what I like, and I mean, I try to do things very correctly in the work side, right? I'm like logically, and then what I actually see when I go in and take something out, I'm like, this has been in for a while. I didn't.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, our code book says no, no, no. You know, and you know you're gonna get somebody in shit. That's the biggest part of that too, right? You're like, and the thing that I
Well,
love is when you call me on it, and I'm like, you know, the inspector here puts on a headlamp and he gets his knee pads on. You're like, the fuck is this guy doing? Going for a call at an
exactly.
inspection. You're like, who crawled and inspected the other shit that I find? Because I'm finding the kindergarten stuff not getting done properly. So where do we go from here?
I think
Like,
I think, and this does sound, sort of boasting, but I think that they're like, oh, it's you. I'm gonna find something wrong. I'm putting on the
maybe so.
headlights. I'm putting on the knee
Because you,
pads,
well,
and I'm
because we're a
going to
little
fucking
mouthy.
town.
I mean, I'm a little mouthy. I chirp off a fair bit, and I'm like, you know, I'll take my shit, sure. You know,
No,
have
I
my
think it is.
fudge,
If you're
you know, oh, case of scotch
those
doesn't work with me.
those other guys are just terrified. Oh, thank you for coming,
Yeah,
Mr. Inspector. Thank you.
yeah,
Blah 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 blah. And he's just like, oh, if there's a steak sandwich in it for you, if
yeah,
blah blah blah,
yeah.
just whatever. And he's like, sure, click 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 click, and off he goes.
Well, because when you call the inspector and you're like, I don't know how to make this right, and you did the inspection, so what do I do to fix this? I don't. And that's a tough one. That's a really interesting one. And you're like, because the no, not me guy comes out very often. Like this gas job. Whoever
Yeah, yeah.
fucked this up should have to pay my bill, which is not insignificant, and it's not getting
It
there because
should.
the paperwork, you have to add like in a larger job. Say you do a 250 a restaurant install, like a big one, good portion for you. All the mechanical toilets, big like full start. It's a lot of money.
It is a lot of
You fuck that
money.
up. Who pays for that? You should,
Yeah.
right? The design, it's a
No,
scary thing,
I agree.
business. So
It's
after the
craziness.
inspector, when I call up and I'm like, the lady shouldn't have to pay for this. My job, flipping these gas things around. I called the inspector 5 times. I called,
Hey, you said that.
I got no answer. Yeah, I got no answer back, which I thought was odd. Then I'm like, I made some phone calls around it, and I'm like, you know what? Okay, hold on. Oh, that feels like about the amount of excitement that should be I'm like, if a
Yeah, yeah.
gas fitter that you know has been doing this for 30 years calls you 5 times in 2 days,
Yeah,
just
something's up, man.
answer the phone. I'm not calling you to fucking talk about the weather, right? So I let this sit for a few days, and I'm like, I gotta fucking fix this. And then still, you saw me when I changed it out, the most bugle oil I got out of that was for my Jesus slippers, and I'm like, yeah. Anyway, I fixed the problem, which was the key, and I'm like, Jesus, like that blew me away. Like the responsibility to
No,
have, and it's pretty cavalier. Like we do a gas system, you know it. You put a 2-inch gas line into a restaurant, you pipe it, you thread your stuff, and it just works for you, right? So
and it's
nothing
going
wrong.
to get worse too, right? Because they're not like they just pulled the old gas out. Like you
Yep,
have to take it separately, so
yep.
there'll be less and less gas fitters.
I know, and it'll be proprietary. There'll be only one company that does gas in the area, right? It's going to thin away as we get less and less. I find that there's the guys that are coming up as the trades age. There's no more gas component. You could be a separate gas fitter, but I don't think guys are going to take it. It's another 2 years
Yeah,
here, and the guys are going to be like, nah, fuck it, I don't want it, I don't need it. When am I ever going to
yeah.
do gas? So then the price for a
Listen,
fitter up it goes.
it's gonna
It's
gonna
good,
skyrocket, right?
good for me. I'm like, fuck yeah, if I'm going to work for another 10 years, right? If I'm going to mentor, if I'm going to teach a few people, I'm not sure how it's going to go for me, but if I get
You could do
back into
the
the, you know,
you could do like the consulting thing.
yeah,
You know what I mean?
wow,
Lots of those. I mean, it's super popular around here with the oil guys, where they sort of age out and get their retirement package, and then they go private contractor and work for a bunch of as a consultant.
well,
I mean, that's an option.
yeah, there's a bunch of avenues that we're going to take. I mean, our knowledge base and what we know is going to carry us through, whether it be a teaching position. Like, I think for that, I would just get a good charge out of it. So I'd get a giggle and just look at what's coming and go, holy shit, are we in trouble? Or you can try to take it from the other side and be like, I can affect change and produce some nice people. So I
Yeah,
might get back and be like, I didn't really want to train, but okay, you know what, I can still work. I can be the hands-on, like say as an owner consultant with 4 or 5 guys under you, go out and just literally go around and do what you see project managers do.
oversee the job and be like, hold on, what are you doing? Let me show you how to drill it. Can't drill 500 holes anymore because my shoulders are done, but let me show you. Let me explain why you're doing what you're doing. Because we know the why behind the what is the biggest thing, right? I think.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of guys do something. I'm like, they have no fucking clue why they're installing it like that. Both of us can explain it. We're like, this is going to be like a fucking lecture, but let me draw it on the board as to why.
Well, it's like your RP and DCVA. Like, this is what the prince said. All right, well, the architect's an idiot. This is how this works, actually. Let me save you 20 grand right here. And like, you know, you're going to pay me whatever the hell it is, a couple grand to do this.
Yep.
And I'll save you 20 by making sure that it's done, or, you know.
Yep. To sell that on the project is like a commissioning agent. Like, this is, it's so government regulated, you wonder how it got passed. How did somebody miss that on the original install? I'm like, you know, somebody stamped that had no fucking idea what he was doing because he didn't understand that portion of it. Well, you know, like I do, that your knowledge base is so spread apart. It's so wild what we know because of what we work with. Boilers, gas, electrical. You know, I mean, I'm like, oh, that doesn't. I don't know about that. You can see if something's done well or not done well. So it's funny.
Okay, no, I think there'll be lots of opportunities.
I think I got to wrap it up. I want it to be done by around 6. I think we've yabbed enough about God knows what. I got to make dinner.
I'm with you.
Okay, brother.
We're like 4 minutes out from getting kicked off anyway, so perfect timing. All right, brother.
I've got this house in Cranbrook.
Yeah.
So I think what I'm going to do is I'll pop in and we'll do a live together. It'll be in and around there where I'll be like, yep, that'll be good. I'll pop into the...
Come by, I'll buy you dinner. You know that.
I
got
that.
A big fat steak.
Yep, I'll pop out. I'll let you know what that is. I think that'll be the next live. It'll be us in person because I got to go see my dimension, all this stuff. So I got to zip across the country. I think it's going to be in June, and that timeline should work out. I'll keep you posted.
Okay, sounds awesome.
Appreciate it. Thanks, man.
Peace, brother.
Yeah, cheers, guys.
Bye.